They said sisterhood was forever, but some wounds don't heal. Julia and Claire were not just sisters, they were each other's best friend, secret keeper, and greatest supporter. Born just 15 months apart, they grew up sharing everything: dolls, clothes, bedrooms, and dreams. People often said they were like twins with different faces. They made a pact when they were just 8 and 9. Sitting under a blanket fort, they held hands and whispered, "No matter what happens in life, we'll always choose each other." And for a long time, that promise held true. Through childhood fights, teenage tears, and heartbreaks, they leaned on each other. When Claire didn't get into her dream school, Julia stayed up all night comforting her. When Julia had her first breakup, Claire made her favorite hot chocolate and played sad songs with her until she laughed again. They supported each other through everything: Julia's art school journey, Claire's nursing career, and even when their parents died suddenly in a car accident. That tragic moment brought them even closer. Claire moved into Julia's apartment after the funeral. They grieved together, healed slowly, and held on tightly to the only family they had left: each other. But neither of them could imagine what was coming, the choice that would tear them apart forever. It all started the night Julia met Nathan. He was handsome, kind, and intelligent. A school teacher with a calm voice and a deep love for poetry. They met at a local art gallery. Nathan noticed Julia standing quietly in front of a painting. He struck up a conversation, and by the end of the evening, they had exchanged numbers. Julia was cautious at first. After past heartbreaks, she didn't want to rush. But Nathan was different. He respected her space, listened to her dreams, and supported her art. Within 3 months, Julia introduced him to Claire. Claire and Nathan got along instantly. Julia would later think. Claire laughed at all of Nathan's jokes. Nathan praised Claire's kindness and sense of humor, but Julia brushed it off. They're just getting along, she told herself. They're family now. Over time, Claire started showing up during Julia and Nathan's dates with excuses. "I just passed by," she'd say. Or, "I thought I'd bring dessert." Julia sometimes felt uneasy but never said anything. After all, it was Claire, her sister, her best friend. The one who promised to always choose her. Nathan proposed to Julia 6 months later. Claire cried when she heard the news. She hugged her sister tightly and said, "I'm so happy for you." But that night, Julia woke up to find Claire gone from the apartment. With no explanation. Something had shifted. But Julia couldn't see it yet. 2 weeks before the wedding, Julia felt tension in the air. Claire became distant, often locking herself in her room, avoiding conversations, and barely looking Julia in the eye. When asked, she simply said, "I'm just tired. Maybe I need space." Julia tried to stay focused on the wedding. She chose Claire as her maid of honor, made her a part of every plan, and shared every dress and flower detail. But Claire seemed uninterested, distracted, almost guilty. Then, one morning, Julia received a message from an unknown number. It said, "Just for words, check his other phone." Julia froze. She didn't know what it meant, but something in her stomach twisted. That evening, when Nathan was asleep, Julia quietly searched through his drawer. Beneath old receipts and notes, she found a second phone. Hands shaking, she turned it on. Dozens of messages flooded the screen, between Nathan and Claire. Her breath caught. Words like, "I can't stop thinking about you," and "what if it was you instead of her," hit her like bullets. There were photos, late-night confessions, and even hotel bookings. On the same days, Julia thought Nathan was out of town for work. Her world collapsed. It wasn't just betrayal. It was betrayal from the two people she loved most, her fiancé and her sister. Julia didn't confront them right away. She needed time to think, to breathe, to scream into her pillow without anyone knowing. She stared at the walls of her room, replaying every moment, every hug, every smile, every word from Claire and Nathan, now stained with lies. The next morning, she invited both of them to dinner, pretending nothing had happened. She set the table for 3, cooked their favorite meal, and lit candles. When they arrived, she smiled and said, "Tonight, I have something to share too." She handed them both printed copies of the messages, every word, every date, every photo. Claire turned pale. Nathan couldn't speak. The room fell into a thick silence. Julia stood with tears in her eyes. "You didn't just cheat on me," she said. "You destroyed the one thing I believed would never break, sisterhood." Claire tried to explain. "It started as a mistake. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to hurt you." But Julia stepped back. "You had every chance to stop, every chance to tell me the truth." Nathan lowered his head. "It was my fault too." But Julia didn't care. "You're both gone from my life," she said, "forever." Julia canceled the wedding. She moved out of the apartment and into a small cottage on the edge of town. She stopped answering Claire's calls and deleted every photo of Nathan. She even burned the wedding dress she once loved. At first, she felt empty. Her days were quiet, her nights sleepless. But slowly, Julia began to return to her art. She painted her pain, her heartbreak, her healing. Her emotions spilled onto the canvas like rain on dry land. She met new people, kind people, who admired her courage. She joined a local art group and started teaching children. Every day she smiled a little more. She laughed again. She danced barefoot in her garden under the stars. Claire sent letters, long, handwritten, full of regret. Julia read them but never replied. She couldn't. The wound was too deep. Some wounds never fully heal. Some scars stay even after forgiveness. But Julia wasn't bitter. She wasn't angry. She had simply outgrown the people who broke her. 1 year later, Julia stood in an art gallery, her own work on every wall. People whispered about her strength, her style, and her story. A journalist asked her, "What inspired this?" Julia smiled gently. "Pain," she replied, "and freedom." Claire showed up that night, standing quietly in the back. She didn't speak. She didn't come close. Julia saw her and simply nodded once. Not in forgiveness, not in hatred, just peace. Sisterhood, she realized, is not always forever. Sometimes it's just a chapter, one that teaches, breaks, and rebuilds. Julia walked out of the gallery, the air cool on her face, her heart finally light. She had lost her sister, but she had found herself, because some wounds never heal completely. But sometimes, the person you become after the wound is stronger than anyone imagined.